Hi everyone, Ryan Ratliff here, guide and fly tying manager from Mad River Outfitters. Thanks for joining us today for a fly tying tutorial. I just got back from Alaska and I have fallen in love with this new, it's not new, but for me this isn't something that I normally do in the daytime, but mousing small creeks. I did quite a few flyouts, went to Brooks Falls, went to Contact, went to Gertrude. Those flyouts, they are loaded with Arctic char, Dolly Varden, the leopard rainbows, grayling. Those places, all the mousing I've done before has been during the nighttime here locally. So when we got there, found that I was able to mouse during the day. Of course, anytime I can swing a fly, and especially swing a surface fly, I was extremely excited. So have a quick pattern today. It's a simple mouse pattern. I'm not going to even put a real name on this fly because there are so many other people that have done that. I'm just going to do a little spin on it. It's going to be on a tube, and I'll explain why it's on a tube as we go. But a couple situations that we had with losing fish, and it was because of the traditional salmon iron. So got the Renzetti tube fly vise here. Have a nano tube from Pro Tube in the vise here, black tube, the floating tube. Gonna go with some UTC 140, my typical thread for this. I don't have the junction tubing in there yet. It just fits better if you just put the tube in, add the junction tubing later, and I'll show you about that in a second. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Just go ahead and wrap back. The nice thing about these nano tubes, they have this little collar right there, so you don't end up crowding your junction tubing area. For the tail, there's a couple traditional ways to do that. You can take a black rabbit strip, pull one out of the package here. Take your length that you might want, which typically I want it to be about the same length as the fly that's going to be. So I'm not going to tie the fly this long. I'm going to trim that back a little bit, but kind of get the right proportions there, roughly about there. Then I'm going to come in, slide the scissors on the hide, so I'm not cutting all the hair. Trim that off. I'm going to show you two tail options here. So this is one way to do it. You got the black rabbit strip here. Leave a little tuft on the end, and I'm going to pull all of this back so it's at a 90-degree angle. And then I'm going to grab it all, and I'm just going to come in with my scissors and trim it all right off the hide. So it gets kind of messy this way. If you tie at the kitchen table like I sometimes do when I'm not in my tying spot upstairs, the wife isn't real happy with that, with all this rabbit fur, because it floats around everywhere. So I'll show you another way. It's not quite as messy. So basically what I'm doing is leaving a little bit of hair on the hide, but trimming off most of it, just so it looks like a little tail. Sometimes you trim it off, it looks like the mouse might have mange. It doesn't matter, the fish don't care. So traditionally this is what you would do. I drop that in, leave a little bit overlap, and then you're just going to do a couple loose wraps up, a couple loose wraps back to lock that in. So that was the traditional mouse tail, is going to be something like that. I've seen people use rubber bands before, but those biodegrade a lot. One thing that I've been using, because it gets a little bit more motion, this rabbit strip tail, if you shake the rod as you swing, it'll move a little bit. But there's a new product out, been out for a little bit, but this Jonathan Kiley has these spiked slow roller tails. This is the medium size. Come all together here, you just kind of pull them apart. This one happens to be purple. Color really isn't that big of a deal. And it's basically a big twister tail. And so I like to use this just because it's going to be moving even in a slow current. Gives me a little bit more versatility. All right, so I like where it curls down. I like to tie it in that way, so it's curling down. And there's a little flat tab. That's what I'm going to use to tie in. Going to tie that in, making sure it's curling down. Just a couple loose wraps up. Crisscross, loose wraps back under tension. All set there. All right, so if you want to use a traditional way and you got all this stuff here, you don't worry about the mess, that's cool. You can go with the Black Rabbit strip tail, or you can use some of these cool products that are out by Jonathan Kiley, the spiked roller tail. All right, so got that tied in. This is super, super simple. I'm going to take a sheet, some Rainey's sheet foam. This one happens to be in black. Again, color isn't that big of a deal. This is going to sit on top. This is going to be your flotation. So got a little piece here I've been working on. You want to trim this down. We're not going to do, I didn't measure it per se, but this is going to be at about a ½ an inch wide. And you're just going to cut as best you can, nice parallel strips. I kind of like to cut a couple for what I'm working on, so I can have this for doing all kinds of other things left over. So, all right, couple strips there. You want two. You want to have 2 strips. They're about ½ an inch wide. I'm going to double them up like this, and then I'm going to cut them right down the center, just for a little bit, about maybe an inch. So it basically like splits those sides there. That's going to help me tie it in. All right, I'm going to lay that. I'm going to kind of gauge how long I want this to be. Right where those slits start, I'm going to tie in one at a time. Going to put that right back. Those slits are going to be just right where I tied in that slow roller tail. And I'm just wrapping this around the hook shank here. I'll turn the vise so you can kind of see. I'm just kind of cupping it over the hook shank, or the tube in this case, and just giving a couple wraps there. Then I'm going to take the next one, put it right on top of that one. Then I'm going to crisscross wraps up. I don't want to totally compress all this foam down. Right when I get to the end here, I'm just going to tie that down real quick. Then cross it back over, kind of like the Chernobyl ant style, that type of thing. So it's not totally compressed, but it's lashed down really well. All right. The next step, I'm going to get some cross-cut rabbit strips. These ones lay back real nice. If you want to have a little bit bushier body, you can use just regular Zonker strips, but this one happens to be in the charcoal mouse color. Pull out one of those pieces there. Obviously I don't need this much. This is a little trick. Sometimes it's a little bit kinked up and the hide's has some memory to it. I like to give it a little pull. It straightens out real nice and gets a little bit thinner. All right, so the cross-cut rabbit strip, the hair is coming off one side of the hide. So when I tie this in, I want to tie it in on the opposite side from me with the hair laying back. And you'll see as I wrap this, each stack will start to go in that, start to lay back on the one previous to it. I'm going to pull off just a little bit of hair so I have just the hide showing. 2 loose wraps. Then tie down with crisscross wraps over top of that little piece there. All right, and then I'm going to take a little bit of Zap-A-Gap. You can use a brushable. This just happens to be the liquid, the squeeze bottle that I have here. And I'm not putting a lot because when you wrap the hide, it'll want to push it into the fibers, into the hair. So I'm just doing a couple little drops down there, just a little strip on that side, do a little strip on this bottom side. Now I'm going to advance my thread up to the front. Again, I didn't compress the foam down real tight, so to leave a little bit of buoyancy there. So if I wrap that hide too tight, it'll compress the foam. So just kind of have to watch out and play with that as you go. Get that little tail out of the way. All right, so I'm going to take this. If I could use the rotary feature if I had a bobbin cradle, or I can use the middle finger technique. So I'm going to hold it up with my middle finger. I'm going to hold this hide, loosen up the tension a little bit, and just slowly wrap forward here. Get the tension just right. And what I'm doing is each wrap of this rabbit is just touching the previous one. So every time I go over, I'm not wrapping it right on top of itself. and I'm not leaving spaces in between, but I'm just going over just enough. Kind of see there's a little bit of rabbit hair floating around. And then once I get to the end here, I'm just going to leave it away from me. Loose wrap, 2 loose wraps. Those thread wraps are right on top of themselves, right there on top of themselves. Just going to lock that down, tighten that up, give 2 more. Then I'm going to trim off this hide here. A little pull, real slow, pop that off. There'll be a little tiny piece there. Nothing to worry about, not that big a deal. All right, so now pretty much I have my 2 pieces of foam in the back. I have my slow roller tail there. Have the body wrapped. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to part this just to kind of help it out a little bit. Just part it just a little bit, especially right in the back where the foam is. Just part it just a little bit. Then I'm going to fold this forward. Now you see there's a little gap and everything right there. If I was going to take my time and really get it real nice and neat, I might have overwrapped that. I'm going to cover it up with dubbing. This is a quick fly. So I have both of these. You notice I didn't glue them together to pull them forward. I left them separate because I think I can get a better tie-in that way. So I'm going to tie in one at a time. All right, so at this point I could be done right here and it would work just fine. I like to add a little bit more flotation on the top and the head here. I want it to push some water, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to fold it back. And basically I'm not going to fold it necessarily in half because I want to have a little bit more on this end sticking up. So I'm going to fold that back so the tie-in point is going to be halfway between that piece that I have left. And this is just the top piece, as you can see. Second one on top of the first, give a little bit of tension. It's going to kick up a little bit like that. This isn't supposed to look like ears or anything like that. It's going to push water. That's all I want it to do. And now I'm going to grab just a little bit of dubbing just to kind of make it look a little bit nicer. If you had some gray dubbing or whatever, I just have some Sculpin brown here available. Just going to grab a little bit. This is that Senyo's laser dub. Just going to put this on there, and basically what I'm going to do is just kind of protect my thread wraps. I could come in at this point and put some UV on there or some super glue, but this is a quick version of it. So I'm going to go behind this little flare there, or right on top of that tie-in point where the flare is there. Then I'm going to fold this back and I'm going to go in front, and I'm going to build this up. I want this to kind of be up like a plow. That tied up there, fold this back, wrap in there, getting this, tucking it up underneath that foam, kind of building up platform for it. Fold everything back, give a couple wraps there at the end, and this is pretty much done at this point. I'm going to trim this piece off flush with the top piece. Looks like it's got a good angle. It's going to really start to plane and give some lift. Do whip finish here. Make sure my dubbing doesn't get in the whip finish. All right, pop that off of there. Everything looks good there. So release this off, pull out the tube. So super fast mouse pattern here. Gonna sit nice and low in the water. It's gonna have a nice squirming tail there. This front part is gonna push some water, which is also gonna cause some lift, which is what we need when we're skating this down a riffle. Last thing you do with the tube is you would trim this off here. Give yourself about a 1/16 of an inch or so. Trim that off. You can do a couple things. You can hit it with a lighter. It'll mushroom a little bit. You can take your mandrel, open it up. You can also take your scissors, as long as they're not super sharp on the edge, and just kind of spin it a little bit. So traditionally what we would do is heat that up and it would mushroom. And I do that quite a bit, but if I leave a little bit there, sometimes I can put a head if I need to do something else on there, or if I need to attach 2 of them together. It's got a little bit there, so I can slip that into the junction tubing. So right there, if you want to give it a name, Katmai skating mouse on a tube. This is the nano tube. You got the little, it's basically like a little nipple right there on the end. You would grab the appropriate size hook guide, slip that on there. You can change out whatever hook. The benefit of this is you have a short shank hook like this Gamrus is excellent. This is a number 6 wide gap short shank hook, no leverage on the fish, because these fish are going to hit downstream. And what we were having was the dollies and the char, the Arctic char, would start rolling, gator rolling, or even the rainbows would start jumping and rolling down below us. And what would happen is that leverage on there, it would just pull out the hook. So having this on a tube, it allows us to put the hook right up on the tail. We can do a perfection loop, drop the hook back off the tail, lots of different things. So definitely rigging tubes, that'll be a different video down the road. But a quick skating mouse with a couple new materials in it, you got to give this a try. Next time you're in Alaska, or even if you're fishing for trout, try it on a tube. You're going to realize that, man, your hookup rate is going to be a lot higher. All right, thanks for joining us, and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube page and leave us a comment. I'd love to hear what you think of this. All right, thanks.